81. Life extension and life extension. To be honest, Avada was a little on edge. Ever since he'd mastered the Jichi Tianya curse, he hadn't needed to rely on the disillusionment charm, so his skills at sneaking around were a bit rusty. That might work to his advantage, though. Any little hesitation would make him look like a first-timer under the charm, helping the disguise hold. The Forbidden Forest at night was quiet in a way that felt menacing. Moonlight made the brambles and twisted branches look sharper, the whole wood like a sleeping beast waiting to pounce. Only the high, thin cries of owls and the distant, low growls from deep inside reminded him danger was real. With everything else, and with what he was about to do on his mind, Avada's nerves tightened. He stepped carefully, keeping his feet from cracking twigs and forcing his breathing low. Only when his hand brushed the package beneath his cloak did he feel a little steadier. "Look." Quirrell's whisper cut the dark just loud enough for him to hear. "That's a unicorn." Avada turned toward the clearing Quirrell pointed to. A pale, silver-white creature lay among sparse trees, its coat glimmering faintly, mane catching the moon, a straight horn rising from its brow. It nibbled at herbs, elegant and unconcerned. "Use Imperio," Quirrell ordered. "Make it come to us." "It's too far. If I get closer, it'll get suspicious." "You can't get closer. Lord Voldemort said you could do it." Avada swallowed. His breath hitched, and the wand in his hand trembled. He forced his arm steady and aimed roughly at the unicorn. In a small, shaking voice he spoke the command, "Imperio." Like an invisible filament threading from wand to mind, the curse slipped into the unicorn. Avada felt the creature's agency go slack. "Come, come." The unicorn rose, glassy-eyed, swayed toward them, and stopped a few meters away. "Very good," Lord Voldemort's voice whispered, coming from the back of Quirrell's head. "You know what to do, Quirrell." "Yes, Lord Voldemort." Quirrell stepped forward 2 paces. A ghostly blue blade extended from the wand he held. With a swing, he struck for the unicorn's neck, but a sudden burst of silver light flared to intercept. The blue blade seemed unique, though. Under its pressure, the silver light shuddered as if cracking. Avada watched the magic with narrowed eyes. He couldn't make sense of the silver light at first, but that ghostly blue blade, wasn't it some form of the killing curse? Not exactly. It didn't instantly end life the way Avada knew the killing curse could. It felt like the same force, weakened, still able to damage life force, but not to cause immediate death. Bang! Under the pressure of the blade, the silver light finally splintered into motes. Quirrell pulled the blade back, switched to a more mundane cutting charm, and plunged it into the unicorn's neck. Silver blood gushed. The unicorn shrieked. The pain snapped it out of the Imperio's control, but it had been cut and bound. It thrashed, trying to flee, but Quirrell held it fast. "Now." Voldemort's voice was softer, urgent. Quirrell kept the creature restrained and bent to drink deeply from the wound. The unicorn's struggles faded, strength draining with each mouthful. "All right," Voldemort said, his tone firmer. "Well done, Ken. If you hadn't been there, Quirrell would have made a fuss trying to manage it on his own. He can't cast 2 spells at once. That's enough for today. I need time to digest this power. We can go back." "Wait, Professor," Avada put in quickly. "I want to collect some unicorn blood for research. This is a rare ingredient. I think I can brew a very potent potion with it." "Suit yourself. The beast is dying anyway. Quirrell, leave him a disillusionment charm." "Yes, Lord Voldemort." Familiar cold wrapped around him as Quirrell's disillusionment charm took hold. Avada watched Quirrell's figure vanish into the trees, then crouched and opened the package he'd been clutching. Inside were 2 bottles, one empty, one filled with a silver-white potion. He used the empty bottle to collect fresh blood, then poured half of the potion onto the unicorn's wound and tipped the other half into its mouth. He murmured an incantation and waved his wand over the terrible, jagged injury. Under the combined effect of potion and spell, the bleeding slowed, the wound knitted, and the unicorn's dulled eyes brightened. It worked. Avada let out a long exhale of relief. He'd begged Hagrid to see unicorns, pleaded for horn and hair, and spent weeks in the library learning unicorn care. It had taken him weeks to brew this unicorn-specific restorative. The creatures were aloof, barely tolerating anyone but Hagrid. He was grateful Quirrell had used an ordinary cutting spell instead of that cold blue dark charm. Had the latter touched the blood, it might have been ruined beyond use. The unicorn gave a weak neigh from where it lay. You're alive, but you lost a lot of blood. Even with this potion, you'll be weak for a while. Can you stand? Avada used a levitation charm to take some of its weight and helped it to wobble to its feet. Its legs trembled, but it managed to face him and lower its head, perhaps a sign of gratitude. It certainly didn't know he'd imperioused it moments before. Go back, Avada whispered. Tell the others to stay away from Hogwarts. He'll come again. He eased the levitation charm until it was gone, then watched the unicorn steady itself and walk off into the trees. Relieved, Avada patted his cloak and thought about the bottle of unicorn blood tucked away. He could take a little, mix it with earth, and give it to Hagrid as if he'd found it in the forest. Better to make Hagrid more watchful and keep Voldemort's recovery as slow as possible. As for explaining why he'd been trespassing in the Forbidden Forest, Avada figured it was hardly uncommon. At worst, he'd offer to help look after Norbert. He was about to move off, still under Quirrell's disillusionment charm, when a soft whoosh cut through the night. Hoo-hoo! A large brown owl swooped over his head and dropped a letter that fluttered to his feet. Avada frowned, and then recognition hit him. The owl was the same one he'd used half a day ago to send a package to Dumbledore. Dumbledore replied? He didn't even change the owl? He picked up the envelope, checked it cautiously for charms, and then opened it. Under the moonlight, he read the letter. Chapter 82. Why did things suddenly increase? To a certain adventurer from the United States. Coincidentally, just before your package arrived, I had finished replying to the previous batch of letters and was idle, so your parcel immediately caught my attention. Its contents commanded my highest regard. After reading your letter, I felt compelled to reply, so I kept the owl a little longer, scanned your notes in the notebooks, and wrote this response. You may receive it rather quickly. Do not be surprised. First, I must express my gratitude and admiration. The data on Lord Voldemort's spiritual power is extremely important. It is like a windfall. With it, I should be able, before long, to deduce the method he used to survive by analyzing the characteristics of that power. After repeatedly calculating and confirming the data's authenticity, my hands were practically trembling. The last time that happened, I cannot say how many years ago. Those were 4 thick notebooks, and you finished them in just a few hours? You even verified them several times? Your feat of maintaining consciousness while under Lord Voldemort's temptation and possession, and risking your life to record the characteristics of his spiritual power, astonishes me. It is one of the bravest and wisest acts I have ever seen. If you are willing, I would be pleased to meet you in person. I would even be glad to recruit you to teach at Hogwarts. But since you have your own difficulties, I will not press the matter here. I have also read the trap magic you provided, and it continues to amaze me. From this magic, I can faintly discern the tireless efforts of a genius who could conceive such precise and exquisite ideas. I must admit, even I cannot find a flaw in it. If it could be activated, Lord Voldemort would certainly not escape. But I must also tell you, regretfully, that I do not currently have the conditions to use this magic. Firstly, as you say, the operation of this magic must be dynamically adjusted according to the state of Lord Voldemort's spiritual power in order to seal him completely. That requires a large number of instruments at the trap's location to detect spiritual power, and the instrument's output would have to be rapidly filtered and processed into useful information for further adjustment. It would be an enormous workload, and such a quantity of apparatus would make the trap conspicuous. And another point, I fear I lack the time and facilities to manufacture a container that meets your specifications. By the technology you provided, this container's material and production requirements are extremely demanding. Even allowing for my modest accomplishments in alchemy, creating it would be a considerable challenge. I estimate it would take at least half a year from collecting materials to completion, and Lord Voldemort will probably act within a few months. I regret that your efforts were wasted. I must admit your plan is even superior to mine. Had I received your letter 6 months to a year earlier, I would have adopted it without hesitation and sought ways to overcome those difficulties. Nevertheless, Be assured I am confident in my own plan. I believe it should be able to severely injure or even directly eliminate Lord Voldemort, putting a complete end to this common menace. You should receive good news from my side around this summer. Again, I salute your wisdom and courage, wishing you a pleasant life and good health. Albus Percival Wulfric Brian Dumbledore. Avada wanted to bury himself. It took Dumbledore's reply for him to see the outrageous oversight in his plan. Of course, the trap that pulled Voldemort's soul into a Horcrux had to be adjusted in real time to Voldemort's fluctuating spiritual power. No one else could simply see spiritual power the way he could. They would need a large number of complicated instruments to infer it indirectly from numbers and symbols after massive filtering and processing. To use a crude analogy, his plan was like asking Dumbledore to take X-rays of someone running at full speed. Dumbledore would have to run beside the person carrying a whole kit of instruments, take pictures at 60 frames a second, and analyze each frame precisely. The image was absurd, but the reality would consume half of Dumbledore's remaining life. When I designed the plan, I only considered how to make it most effective, Avada thought. I forgot that the plan had to be usable by Dumbledore. There was another sting. Dumbledore's letter hinted he could deduce the way Voldemort survived from the data. So wouldn't he soon know about the Horcruxes? Damn it. I need to deal with the Resurrection Stone as soon as possible. I'll go to Little Hangleton this summer. I don't know whether I can break the curse on the Resurrection Stone with my current skill. At the very least, I must move it. I can't let Dumbledore see it before the curse is broken. But I can't give up the chance to kill Voldemort. I can handle spiritual power, and there seems to be a suitable container ready. All right. Avada pulled a dragonhide glove from somewhere and shoved his left hand into it. This time, I'll do it myself. Huh? He paused, then laughed at himself. Why did I put on a glove? Sheepishly, he took it off and rubbed his chin, then resumed reading the letter in his hands. Oh, and one more thing, Dumbledore had written. If one uses the same owl, the owl's locating charm can identify the sender regardless of anonymity. You might need to devise a charm to shield owls. In future Horcrux operations, anonymity will be indispensable. If someone follows an owl back here, that would be very bad. Avada frowned. If he wanted to avoid exposing his ability to sense spiritual power, he would have to work behind Dumbledore's back. He remembered Dumbledore had been tricked into going to London on the day of that incident. Perhaps he could take advantage of a similar diversion to seal Voldemort in one fell swoop. But Harry's protective charm would destroy Quirrell's body and force Voldemort to flee. He would need Baron's help, get his crystal ball, and then explain a lot to him. He also had to give Hagrid the unicorn blood sample to nudge Hagrid into greater vigilance. And for a while, he'd have to keep hunting unicorns with Quirrell. When had he accumulated so many things to do? As exams approached, Hogwarts had quieted. The castle felt taut with concentration, the usual clatter in corridors and common rooms reduced to a murmur. Still, some carried burdens far heavier than ordinary exams, 5th and 7th years, of course, but also those with responsibilities that outweighed any school test. Inside the room of requirement, Baron sat opposite Avada, hands clasped under his chin, listening as Avada laid out the full plan. So you've prepared everything else, Baron said finally. All that's missing is my black crystal ball. You want to use its soul-capturing ability together with your magic to trap the tattered soul of Lord Voldemort, the one possessing Quirrell. Avada nodded. Yes, the trick is getting the ball onto Voldemort's body. He won't let us take part in stealing the Philosopher's Stone, and if Harry touches Quirrell, Quirrell will die and Voldemort will escape. Have you asked Dumbledore for help? Baron asked. With his power and insight, he might be able to. I planned to, Avada interrupted. I told him everything, but after I saw what it would require, I realized the only person who can carry this out is me. He looked away for a moment, his expression heavy. Telling Dumbledore would do more harm than good. He can't keep Voldemort in the way this needs, and his presence would frighten Voldemort into fleeing. He'd wreck the whole thing from the start. Baron stared, incredulous. The headmaster, Hogwarts' bulwark, the patron saint of so many who'd come through strange circumstances, would be useless here? It sounded absurd, but Avada sounded certain. In the original line I saw, Voldemort's soul did slip free of Dumbledore's grasp, Avada continued. Dumbledore even agreed this plan is better than the original, but he cannot carry it out himself. I have seen the future. Dumbledore cannot hold Voldemort, and Harry doesn't need protection in this particular way. It has to be done now. Baron fell silent, thinking. After a long moment, he looked up. I have an idea. Want to hear it? Avada raised an eyebrow, curious how Baron had solved a problem that had eaten at him for months. Baron outlined his plan. As he spoke, Avada's curiosity shifted to surprise, then to horror, and finally to helpless resignation. You're very Slytherin about this, Avada said at last, half admiring, half exasperated. Clever, ruthless, but you can't get involved. You'll never deceive him. Voldemort knows legitimacy. Voldemort is weak, maybe, but Quirrell is not. If Quirrell fights back, he could overwhelm me in minutes, let alone you. Even with the conditions you mentioned. Is it feasible? Baron cut in. It's feasible, Avada admitted grudgingly. Feasible is enough. Baron's eyes flamed. The wizarding world shouldn't keep being poisoned by that bastard. If sacrificing a little of my safety can pin him down and bring peace to Britain, to the whole world, then it's worth it. There's no one else who meets all the conditions. If your actions go as planned, he won't even have a chance to act, and I won't be in danger. Don't tell me you don't trust me enough to stand by a friend while he takes a risk. Avada opened his mouth, hesitated, then sighed. At worst, we can wait, he said slowly. There'll be another chance later. No, Baron said, voice hard. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opening. You told me yourself, if it fails now, the only other chance is when he revives, and that's a huge unknown. The price to end him now is my safety. That's a bargain. I can't put my life above the safety of everyone else. I have to do this. No one else can. I trust you. I trust your plan and that you'll keep me from catastrophe. That's enough. Avada studied him for a long time, then looked him straight in the eyes. Are you sure? Sure, Baron replied. You know occlumency? Avada asked. Yes, I practiced it last summer. My father said I'm good. Apparition? No, my parents won't let me learn it yet. Avada nodded. All right, give me the crystal ball. Baron handed over the black globe. Avada took a loose silver ring from his pocket and slipped it over the sphere. He drew his wand and murmured an incantation. Slowly, the ring altered, shrinking until it fit the crystal ball as if forged with it. This should do it, Avada said, returning the orb. Once he's inside, the ring will suppress his mental power. He'll never get out. I understand, Baron said, staring at the ball. Call me when the time comes. Of course. Avada hesitated, then added, Go back. I still have things to research. Baron rose, hefting the crystal ball carefully. See you. After Baron left, Avada pushed open the Room of Requirements door and walked out briskly. Not to the stairs, but in the opposite direction, up to the headmaster's office. He intended to tell Dumbledore about the plan and ask him to keep Baron's safety in mind. He and Harry might not need the extra protection. Baron did. If that meant risking Dumbledore sensing something of his magic, Avada decided he would accept it. 84. Shocking change. Cockroach cluster, fizzing whizbees, bloody lollipops. Under the stone gargoyle's displeased stare, Avada finally hit on the right password and hurried up the spiral staircase, pounding on the familiar wooden door. Professor Dumbledore, are you there? No answer. Professor Dumbledore? He called again, then gave up waiting and pushed the door open. Thankfully, it wasn't locked. The headmaster's office looked as it always did. Tables and chairs, silver instruments, the sorting hat, and the perch where Fawkes should have been. The portraits of past headmasters and headmistresses were arranged as usual, their painted eyes closed as if asleep. Only Dumbledore and Fawkes were missing. Avada looked around helplessly, then turned to the portraits. Professors, can anyone tell me where Professor Dumbledore has gone? And when he'll be back? You are, that student with the ridiculous name, aren't you? Armando Dippet was the first to open his eyes. One after another, the portraits stopped pretending to sleep and peered down at Avada with keen interest. Ahem, it's me, Professor. Avada cleared his throat, then got to the point. Do you know where Professor Dumbledore has gone? I have something urgent to discuss with him. He went to London this morning, Dippet replied. He probably won't be back for a few days. What? Avada felt the ground drop out from under him. Dumbledore had gone to London now? There was still over a week until the finals. In the story, he knew Voldemort's move would come after the exams. Why would he leave now? Is there any way to contact him immediately? He asked desperately. Unfortunately, no. Dilys Derwent answered. I could speak to St. Mungo's, but none of us have a direct line to Dumbledore. We're paintings, after all. All right, I understand. Thank you. Avada left the office and ran for the third-floor Defense Against the Dark Arts office, knocking hard. Professor, are you there? I need to ask. The doorknob sighed, and the door opened a crack. Quirrell's head peered out, a live human, and not accompanied by any other shadow. Ken, he whispered. He beckoned Avada inside and shut the door, then lowered his voice. Are you here to see the master? Yes, The master is resting. Quirrell smiled, but his voice was quiet and calculating. He is recuperating for tonight's action. Tonight? Avada's heart plummeted, but he forced a surprised tone. After tonight, the master can be resurrected? No, not that fast. Quirrell's expression brightened. After we obtain that item tonight, the master and I will need to leave Hogwarts for a time. Resurrection is complicated, but within a few months, he will regain a body and his power. That's good. Avada tried to sound reassured. When will you take over Hogwarts? That will have to wait. Quirrell shook his head. Dumbledore and the Ministry are not easy to deal with, but once the Master is restored, you can step away from this decaying dogma and follow him openly, learn true power. At your rate, by the time we control the Ministry in Hogwarts, you could fight for us and gain merit. Make sure you perform well then, he added, almost kindly. You are the second greatest contributor to the Master's resurrection. Having been guided by him for so long, he will focus on you. Avada forced a smile full of eager expectation. I'll be waiting for your news. Don't worry, this time it's foolproof. Quirrell set a grave, confident tone and escorted Avada to the door. The moment it shut, Avada's expression crumpled. It really was moved up. Why? He ran through possibilities. Did I mess up his blood ritual with the unicorn? I had Hagrid notice something odd and warned the unicorns to flee. The hunts failed several times after that. Why would he advance the plan? And if he's acting tonight, do Harry and the others even know? Will they be trapped tonight? He had to act. Avada dashed down to the owlery, found a perching bird, propped a scrap of parchment against the wall, and wrote as fast as he could. Dear Professor Dumbledore, as I write this, Lord Voldemort plans to sneak into the fourth-floor corridor tonight to steal the Philosopher's Stone. I don't know whether your trip to London is truly business or if you were misled, but I must tell you something important. Some time ago, I received a package containing 5 notebooks and an anonymous letter. The sender claimed to be an American adventurer who could foresee the future. He said I could use the magic in those notebooks to completely seal Lord Voldemort. He also claimed he had given that magic to you, but that you said you couldn't cast it. The letter mentioned that my friend Baron Shafiq has a prophecy orb that can function as a container. I admit I have an unusual sensitivity to mental power. My mind seems faster than other wizards. I learn quickly. I can sense others' moods, and several times I've been able to anticipate the magic others intended to cast. After discussion, we decided to try exactly as the letter suggested, to use that magic to seal Lord Voldemort and keep the wizarding world safe. Please return immediately after receiving this. Baron needs your protection, but please do not show yourself at once. According to the letter, that might scare Lord Voldemort away. Ken. He tied the letter to the owl's leg and as he released it, hurriedly instructed the bird. The owl seemed to sense the urgency and with a beat of wings shrank to a black dot before vanishing. Next, I'll check on Harry and the others. He glanced toward the direction the owl had flown and then raced back into the castle. It was Sunday afternoon. With exams looming, if Harry and his friends hadn't heard, they'd likely be in the library. If they had heard. He didn't find them in the library, and a quick look in the staff room revealed Hermione slipping away from the doorway, furtive and tense. Bloody hell, she muttered. Avada sighed. Why do they always only realize things the day before Voldemort moves? He went back to the library and dragged Baron, diligently studying, out of his books. Something's changed. He's moving tonight. Harry and the others will probably get dragged in. We have to move the plan up. Huh? Where is Ken? In the dead of night, a sudden clatter echoed down the empty fourth-floor corridor, intermittent breathing, deliberately muffled footsteps, the rustle of clothing, and then a voice. "The door's ajar," a clear female whisper said. "See, I told you. Snape must have gone in ahead of us. I wonder what spell he used on Dumbledore. He hasn't been suspected yet," a boy's voice added. "If you want to back out now, it's not too late," he continued. "You can take the invisibility cloak. I don't need it." "Don't be silly," another male voice replied. "Let's go together," the female voice said. "Harry, Ron, Hermione, you actually came." A calm voice answered from the doorway. Thud. Ouch. 3 dull thuds sounded as 3 disheveled figures tumbled onto the floor, an unfamiliar piece of silk lying abandoned beside them. Who's there?" someone whispered. Harry, Ron, and Hermione didn't bother hiding. They scrambled back on all fours, fumbling for their wands. "It's me." Baron's figure stepped out of the shadows. "I'm here to help you get through the next parts." "Baron?" Harry breathed. "Why are you here? How did you know?" "Ken asked me to help, and I know how important tonight is. Dumbledore isn't here, and the other professors are convinced the stone is safe. Only those of us who know the truth can do anything," Baron said, his voice serious. "You and Ken were both involved in the incident. Where is Ken? Where is he now?" "He has more important things to do," Harry said. Baron shook his head and moved toward the door. "Hurry and get inside. Every second you delay increases the chance of something going wrong." Harry, Ron, and Hermione exchanged quick glances and huddled together, whispering, "Can we trust him?" "He should be trustworthy. He's helped us before, and he's Ken's friend. But he's from Slytherin, and Snape's head of Slytherin. Maybe he's been sent by Snape? Send a second year to stop us? Snape has far better options. Slytherin prefect's Filch. Besides, remember when Snape tried to do something to Harry? Baron was the first to notice. They're not working together. Don't jump to conclusions like we did with Ken." "I'm still a bit nervous. So are we going in or not?" "All right, you're right." They looked up. "We'll rely on you. Thank you for your trust." Baron nodded. "You all know Fluffy's weakness, right? Did anyone bring an instrument?" "I did." Harry produced a small flute from his pocket, put it to his lips, and began a soft, tuneless melody. As the first note floated through the corridor, the breathing beyond the door lengthened and deepened. "Don't stop," Baron said quietly. "It'll wake the moment the music stops." Baron eased the door open just enough for one person to slip through and slipped inside. Harry and the others followed, tiptoeing in and closing the door behind them. They stood before the trapdoor beside the 3-headed dog. "Just jump," Baron urged in a low voice. "Something below will catch you. Ken has already scouted the mechanisms." Baron was the first to drop through. Ron and Hermione followed quickly. Harry hesitated only long enough to stop playing the flute and steal one last glance at the snoring Fluffy. A harp lay abandoned at the creature's feet. Snape is already inside, Harry thought, anxiety rising. He stowed the flute and jumped into the dark. For a moment he felt weightless. Cold, damp air whistled past his ears as he fell. Thump. "Don't move." Baron's calm voice came from the darkness. "That's Devil's Snare holding you. If you struggle, it will tighten, and you could suffocate. Incendio." Bright flames sprang to life, burning away the Devil's Snare in the dark. They could see one another again. "Thank you," Harry and the others said, relieved. As they freed themselves, Ron asked, "Baron, you said Ken had figured out this place already?" "That's right," Baron replied. "Then why didn't he move the Philosopher's Stone? He knew someone was trying to steal it, and he could have contacted Dumbledore." "Because he couldn't get past the final safeguard Dumbledore set himself," Baron said gravely. "Dumbledore knew someone would come for the stone. He didn't move it because he trusted the magic he put in place." "So, we're stuck?" Hermione said, face paling. "The one after the stone is you-know-who, Voldemort. He's as powerful as Dumbledore. Dumbledore's protections might not stop him, and if Snape learned how to break them—" "We have to hurry," Harry said. Baron nodded. The 3 reacted exactly as Ken had expected. Things were going according to plan. "Let's move on. The next chamber is down this corridor. Harry should like this one." Baron walked ahead, casting Lumos. His hushed voice echoed in the narrow passage. "Baron, can you tell us what Ken's been doing this past year? Where is he now?" Harry began. "Don't ask," Baron said, shaking his head. "Until this is over, Ken's actions must remain secret. It's very important. They reached the end of the corridor and stepped into a vaulted room lit by 1,000 shimmering lights. Countless jewel-like keys beat their wings and fluttered through the air. Across the chamber was a heavy wooden door. Beside the players hung broomsticks. "The flying things are keys," Baron explained. "We have to catch the largest key on the broomsticks to open that door. Don't try to attack them or pull them with magic. That will provoke a violent backlash." "I understand," Harry said. Baron watched as Harry, Ron, and Hermione mounted the broomsticks and chased the keys, maneuvering expertly to corner the largest among them. He couldn't help but sigh inwardly. These children hadn't questioned why such elaborate defenses would also provide broomsticks to intruders, though he had deliberately downplayed the risks to them. I hope Ken's judgment wasn't wrong, Baron thought. I hope Harry can stand before Voldemort and be safe. If not, there will be no forgiveness for what I've done. Though using a first year is shameful, it seemed the least costly path, for the greater good. Baron did not have to wait long. Harry, an excellent seeker, caught the key almost at once with the quiet help of his two friends. He dropped to the floor and ran to the door to open it. "Don't be so quick to open it," Baron called, stopping them. "Who here is best at chess?" "That would be me." Ron stepped forward. "Is the next challenge a chess game?" Hermione asked. "Exactly," Baron said. "But it's more than a game. In the next room, you'll replace the pieces with yourselves. If the piece you're standing in for is captured, your body takes the blow. So to avoid unnecessary injuries, we should keep the number of players down. It's best if only the best chess player goes." "I understand." Ron hesitated for a moment, took the key from Harry, and opened the door. They watched him go in and take his place on the board as the Black Rook. The enormous chessmen shouted and clashed, their weapons smashing opponents without mercy. Ron moved cautiously, issuing commands with a grave face as the pieces on both sides were whittled away. At last, the bishop under Ron's control shattered the White King. Ron picked up the fallen crown and held it aloft. "I did it!" He wiped the sweat from his face, waved to the three who waited at the entrance, and shouted, "Well done, Ron!" Harry and Hermione ran forward, high-fived him, and Ron looked over at Baron, who stood with his arms folded, and thanked him sincerely. "Thanks, Baron. If you hadn't told us to send just one, someone would have been killed in that game. Those pieces were brutal." "You're welcome," Baron said with a smile. "The aim was to minimize loss." "Don't celebrate yet," Ron added. "That was only one trap. The real difficulties are still ahead." A chill ran down their spines. Professor Snape's wards were still waiting. Dumbledore's magic was not the only obstacle. "Then let's move on," Harry said. The next room contained two trolls that had already been knocked out. They lay sprawled, eyes rolling, and enormous bumps on their heads. "Ha," Ron said. "Professor Snape even saved us some trouble. I hope those trolls wore him down a little." Baron only glanced at him and said nothing. They opened the next, the penultimate door. For a moment, none of them dared to look at what lay ahead, but there was nothing monstrous, just a table with 7 oddly shaped bottles lined up on it. "This must be one of Snape's magics," Harry said. "He must have walked past it, but what do we do?" A burst of flames suddenly erupted across the doorway they had just entered through, sealing it. The flames glowed an intense purple, and the heat stung even from several meters away. At the same time, black flames shot up from the door leading forward. They were trapped between them. "Look!" Hermione grabbed a roll of parchment beside the bottles. Harry and Ron leaned over to read with her. The paper read, "Danger lies ahead, safety behind. 2 of us in the middle can help you. Drink them. 1 will take you forward, 1 will send you back to where you started. 2 contain nettle wine, and 1 is death in a cup. Choose carefully. The smallest bottle will lead you forward. The round bottle on the far right will send you back." "Don't start guessing," Baron cut in roughly. "Ken already figured out the solution. If you don't believe it, you can calculate it yourselves, but we don't have much time." Harry and the others exchanged looks, then stared at the smallest bottle. "There's only 1 sip left," Hermione said. "It looks like only one of us can go forward." "I suggest Harry goes," Baron said. "The others should return." Baron's voice was calm. "Harry has a quality that protects him from a lot of bad luck. That's why Ken and I agreed to bring you first years first." "But is there no other way?" Hermione protested. Baron, can you nox those flames? No, Baron answered. This magic was left by Professor Snape. His skill is far above ours. If Ken had more time, he might have broken it, but by then the Philosopher's Stone would probably be gone. I understand. Harry stepped forward and took the smallest bottle. Harry, Hermione began. There's no choice, Harry said fiercely. Every second we delay increases the chance something goes wrong. We have to stop Voldemort from getting the stone. If I die, then at least I died trying to stop him. He looked at them, voice steady. You're amazing, Hermione. Hermione rushed forward, tears in her eyes, and hugged him tightly. Ron's face was grim. He clapped Harry on the shoulder. Come back alive, mate. I will. Harry forced a smile. He tipped his head back and drank the potion in the smallest bottle. Ron and Hermione each took a bottle that would send them back and drank them as well. Then Hermione wiped her eyes and stepped through the purple flames with Ron. I still can't bring myself to like Slytherin people, she muttered as they passed through. Baron took a bottle from the table, but instead of drinking it, he put it back down. Harry and the others stared in surprise as he reached into his pocket and produced a small bottle that matched the one Harry had just drunk. You had another bottle? Hermione almost shrieked. Of course, Baron said. Since Ken had already worked out the traps, it made sense to take a sample back to analyze and duplicate it. He looked at Hermione, then tilted his head back and drank. I have to go in too. I can't shirk responsibility for what I set in motion. Then Harry began. No, Baron said. That's it. Just this one bottle. What comes next is too dangerous for the two of you. First years without any special protection and weak in combat. If you followed, you'd only be a burden. You need to go straight back to Hogwarts and write to Dumbledore for help. Ron and Hermione had already gone through the purple flames and were out of sight. Baron turned to Harry, expression grave. Ready? Of course, Harry replied. They took a breath and stepped into the black flames that licked the doorway forward. For a moment, everything went hot and bright. Then they were through. Harry cried out the name of the figure standing ahead of them in surprise. Professor Quirrell! Petrificus Totalis! A voice shouted from behind. Something struck Harry in the back, a body lock, a jolt of magic, and his limbs went rigid as stone. In an instant, his body became unresponsive, every muscle frozen. He forced his eyes to move and saw Baron pivot with an eager expression. Baron stepped forward, bowed deeply to Quirrell, and could not keep a smile from curving his lips. I have brought you Harry Potter, Baron said. Dark Lord, Quirrell answered. Avada Kedavra? Avada Kedavra. Harry had never imagined anyone could make him hate so deeply. More than 10 Snapes and 100 Malfoys combined. If he could move, he would have smashed that man's face until his arms fell off. Instead, he lay bound by Petrificus Totalis, every muscle locked except his eyes. All he could do was watch and listen as the horror in front of him unfolded. Oh? Quirrell sounded surprised. You are? Baron Shafiq? Quirrell asked. Yes, Professor Quirrell. My lord. Baron Shafiq answered softly, with an elegant smile. I was sent by Ken with a grand gift, to deliver to you the one who knocked you out of a body, and to be here as your glory returns. Ken sent you? Quirrell untied his turban. The sight underneath made every pore on Harry's body scream. Where the back of Quirrell's head should have been, there was a face Harry had never seen, chalk white, eyes glowing crimson, a pair of thin, snake-like nostrils. The lips moved, speaking in a dry, curious voice that didn't spare a glance for Harry. Yes, Professor. Baron's pupils narrowed for the briefest instant, but his smile never faltered. Ken, after looking through some materials and sorting out a few clues, concluded that what you needed was Nicholas Flamel's Philosopher's Stone. To help you, he went out of his way, talked to Hagrid, discovered Fluffy's weakness, but in the end, he found you were already one step ahead. So he decided to give you a little surprise. Voldemort's voice went on through Quirrell. And what could be more appropriate in this school than Harry Potter? So he went into the passage early, explored the protections, saw they posed no threat to you, and then slipped clues to Potter to make him think he was the savior, that only he could stop you getting the stone. Then, under my guidance, he walked through the mechanisms unhindered, charging right into your presence. Harry's vision blurred with rage. Something in his chest tightened until he could barely breathe. He wanted to scream the vilest things at Baron Shafiq, but the voice from Quirrell, Voldemort's soft, insidious whisper, had a strange, numbing hold on him. Baron's face slowly faded from the center of his fury, replaced by those crimson eyes. "Look at me now," Voldemort whispered. "Only a shadow, only a vapor. I can only take physical shape by sharing a body with another. Only unicorn blood gives me some strength. You saw Quirrell drinking for me in the Forbidden Forest that night." Quirrell. Harry mouthed the name, almost stunned. After a long moment, he forced the rest out. "From the beginning, besides Snape, Ken, Baron, and Quirrell were all working for you?" "Snape?" Voldemort snorted. "He doesn't even know of my existence or my plans. He's the sort to curry favor with Dumbledore. He went to great lengths to keep Quirrell from the stone. When Quirrell tried to drop you to your doom, Snape even cast a counter-curse to protect you." "Snape was protecting me?" Harry could hardly grasp it. "Enough, Harry Potter, the savior," Voldemort interrupted, amused. "Don't ask more questions. I'll give you a choice. Do you want to live?" Harry's face went white. His voice shook, but he managed to answer, roaring back at Voldemort. "No, I know you won't tell me the secrets of the Philosopher's Stone or Dumbledore, so I only ask one thing. Come here and stand before this mirror. Tell me what you see. Fulfill that simple request, and perhaps the merciful Lord Voldemort will spare you." "Baron, move him in front of the mirror." "As you command, Professor." Baron waved his wand. Ropes tightened, then released. The Petrificus Totalis faded. Harry tried to move, but could only wriggle a little as Baron dragged him before the tall, ornate mirror. Why did Voldemort want this? Harry wondered frantically. He suspected anything but mercy. He suspected trickery. Could the stone be hidden in the mirror? If so, Voldemort couldn't take it. He had to lie. He had to trick them. Harry stared at his reflection. For an instant, the boy in the glass smiled in a way Harry hadn't been smiling. The reflection reached into its pocket, drew out a bright red stone, blinked, and tucked it back in. At the same moment, the real weight of something heavy slid into Harry's own pocket. "I've got the stone. It's in my pocket." Harry's chest leapt. He dared to think he'd outwitted them. Voldemort hadn't seen. He could still save things. "Just as I thought," Voldemort said, amused. "You've taken out the Philosopher's Stone. It's in your pocket." Harry's hope died. He'd become the key to helping Voldemort, without ever meaning to. No, this couldn't be happening. It wasn't meant to go this way. "Quirrell, give me the body," Voldemort ordered. Harry heard the words as if from far away. Quirrell turned with a grin that was anything but human and raised his wand toward Harry. "Avada Kedavra," the word rang out. Harry shut his eyes in despair, expecting the white light. Nothing happened. Voldemort's voice held confusion as he examined Quirrell's hands and wand. "Has my power not returned? I can't even cast a killing curse?" Before he could try again, another voice trembled. "Professor?" "Yes, Baron?" Voldemort asked, mollified. He was in a giddy mood. With Harry Potter and the stone now before him, he had 1,000 options. May I become your Death Eater?" Baron blurted, struggling to keep his excitement down. "The Shafiq family has long wanted to serve you, but could not. Now you are about to be whole again. I want to be the first." Voldemort laughed, delighted. "How could I refuse such merit? Come here, Baron." Harry watched, incredulous, as Baron threw himself to his knees and crawled toward Quirrell, crawling on the floor until he was at his master's feet. He spread his arms, voice trembling with joy. May I embrace you, Professor? Master?" "Of course," Voldemort said softly, and accepted the embrace, rolling up the sleeve of the body he inhabited. Baron clung to Quirrell's torso, murmuring in disbelief. "I did it! I did it!" "Of course you did! My death!" The sound broke into a high, tortured shriek. Voldemort's scream cut off as Quirrell's body went limp, convulsing uncontrollably. Harry, still bound, heard the sudden panic in the voice that had sounded so sure a moment before. "What did you do?" The room had changed completely. At some point, the walls had become covered with strange, intricate sigils, and the floor, inlaid with alien materials, seemed to be evaporating, colors bleeding away into nothing. Quirrell's body convulsed uncontrollably. He collapsed, his wand tumbling from his hand. But what made Lord Voldemort's face go white was seeing, as if pulled by an invisible hook, a mass of gray mist being drawn out of Quirrell's skull and poured into something pressed to the back of his head. Harry and the others watched in stunned silence as that fog poured into a black crystal orb set in a white ring. "How is it, Professor Lord Voldemort? The grand gift I prepared for you. Are you satisfied?" Three voices cried out at once, Harry's, Baron's, and Lord Voldemort's. Quirrell could no longer shout. "Why did you come out? Didn't we agree you'd cast from the shadows?" Baron sprang up, stepping away from Voldemort and rushing to Harry's side. He had forced himself into the open for a reason. If Dumbledore hadn't shown, and Voldemort had any hidden defenses, Baron had to be there to draw the fire. Ken kept his wand trained on Voldemort, jaw clenched, forehead gleaming with sweat, every muscle taut. He didn't waste words. "You." Baron huffed in annoyance at the interruption, and with a quick flick, cut Harry free. "It's over, Harry," he said. Harry felt like his head was full of bees. Everything happening made no sense, more absurd than any surreal painting. "I'm sorry for using you without your knowledge," Baron said, helping him to his feet, his voice full of apology. "You don't know occlumency. You couldn't defend against legilimency, so we had to keep the plan from you. Everything was for this moment, for the final victory." The final victory. All of this was planned by you and Dumbledore? You knew from the start Voldemort would come for the stone? Harry demanded. Baron didn't answer directly. He gripped his wand and watched Ken, who was maintaining the hidden magic, as the conversation from hours earlier unreeled in Harry's mind. Harry tried explaining his understanding of the setup. "You have a charm like an undetectable extension. Magic hidden so the room looks normal, while the traps and wards are concealed. When he relaxes his guard, you trigger them?" Ken nodded. "Something like that." "Then my part is simple," Harry said. "You stay hidden, keep the magic going. I put the crystal ball on Voldemort." Don't be ridiculous. I can't," Ken started. "Let me finish." Baron cut in. "Didn't you expect that Harry and his companions would follow Quirrell? That Harry would end up facing Voldemort, shattering Quirrell's body and forcing your soul to flee? If I move with them through the levels to the end, then ambush Harry from behind and control him, we can prevent him from touching Quirrell. I helped Harry in the competition," Ken finished, "and Lord Voldemort knows I'm your friend, a pure-blood Slytherin. I have their trust. No one would suspect me. So Harry trusts me to enter," Baron said, "and when Voldemort sees me apparently turn against Harry, he'll trust me too, think I'm loyal to him. You tell him you brought Harry to please him, but were too afraid to show your face because you acted on your own. You're sure Harry has that quality, this immunity to Voldemort's harm? That's what makes this possible. When Voldemort relaxes, I flatter him, beg to be accepted as a Death Eater. He won't refuse. I hug him, and while I'm pretending to be obedient, you fix the crystal ball you've hidden in your sleeve to the back of his head," Harry finished. "You'll wear wide sleeves, so the face on the back of his head won't see. The dark mark is on his right. Use your left to hide the orb. Once you embrace him, I'll trigger the wards so he doesn't have time to react." "And you've replicated the potion for advancement?" Ken asked quietly. "Give me 1 dose. Ron and Hermione might be nearby. They don't have Harry's property. If they rushed in, it'd be too dangerous." A strangled scream cut through the room. Voldemort's voice was fraying. The gray mist inside the crystal orb shifted, and a human face began to form, a little of its chin already swallowed. "Ken?" Voldemort's cry cracked. How is this possible?" "Nothing is impossible, Lord Voldemort. Tom Marvolo Riddle," Ken said calmly, watching the terror twist Voldemort's features. He allowed a mocking smile. Provocation would keep Voldemort off balance while he held the wards. He would pepper the Dark Lord with words to distract him from more dangerous spells. "What? Who are you?" Voldemort snarled. Ken tugged the corner of his mouth in a sneer and kept the wards humming. "Who am I?" he said softly. "Didn't you ever wonder why you and I share so many similarities? Why I could deduce Imperio's rudiments? Why I can use this magic as if it had been made for you? Do you remember the name Merope Gaunt?" Voldemort hissed. "What?" The question tore something open in Voldemort's voice. A chunk of the fog fled into the crystal with sudden speed. "Who are you? Could it be?" "Oh, sorry," Ken said flippantly. "Just a joke. I have nothing to do with Merope Gaunt. I'm no relation." Seeing Ken's mocking expression drove Voldemort nearly to rage. "Enough of your jokes." Ken watched as almost half of Voldemort's soul was sucked into the orb. He relaxed barely a fraction. Ever since I learned who you were, after you branded me, I never intended to bow to you, Lord Voldemort. After you showed me who you were, I saw a path where you could be utterly undone. I prepared for this, studying mental magic, getting close to you, memorizing your cues. I didn't learn this from Dumbledore or from me at all. An adventurer from America who claimed you possessed them gave us this magic. You should know who I mean, shouldn't you? Voldemort's face went pallid and then, like a snake, coiled with fury. The portion of soul still outside the orb swelled, then lashed back with desperate force. It surged into Quirrell's head, and the inert servant jerked. His right hand, seeming suddenly not his own, snatched up his fallen wand, and to everyone's horror, turned it and pointed it at his own throat. No! Quirrell's eyes widened in absolute terror. Master, don't, please! The wand flared. A ghostly blade of blue light spat from its tip and slit Quirrell's neck open in an instant. Black blood spouted like a fountain. Quirrell's face collapsed into disbelief and horror. His eyes glazed over. With a sound like a broken thing tearing, Voldemort's soul split in two. One half was wrenched into the crystal orb, drawn away like a severed tail, while the other, wrenching free, clung to the shrinking thing that Quirrell had been. Voldemort's scream turned into a keening cry as half of him disappeared into glass and flame. When Lord Voldemort's soul shattered, Avada felt his stomach drop. In that instant, he understood. Voldemort had split his soul by killing Quirrell, tearing himself apart to escape like a gecko shedding its tail. What kind of monstrous trick was that? This time, he hadn't merely shed a fragment, he'd abandoned half his soul. After 6 previous splits, his main soul was already small, yet he could still sever half of it. How dare he? The sliver left behind could hardly be larger than an ordinary fragment. A roar full of hatred rolled through the room, and they looked up just in time to see a small wisp of gray mist break free from the crystal ball's pull and drift toward the ceiling. A savage human face swam within it, fixed on Avada with eyes that seemed ready to devour him. Just you wait, Ken. It won't be that easy to step over my corpse and become the next Dark Lord, the voice hissed. I am immortal. I will return one day, and then you and everything you love, none of you will escape. Then Voldemort surged forward and was gone, passing through the wall as if nothing could stop him. Avada watched the tiny scrap of soul hurry away until it slipped from sight and from his magical senses, and exhaled a heavy, resigned sound. He got away, he said, but it wasn't for nothing. He lost half his soul. The last Horcrux can't be made, or rather, if it already exists, it's somehow incomplete. His sanity ought to be much worse now. Avada frowned. I don't know how much this will weaken him when he revives, or even if he can revive at all. It's astounding. The combined volume of his Horcruxes already exceeds what remained of his main soul. He bent and picked up the black crystal ball that contained that salvaged half of Voldemort's soul, then turned to Baron and Harry, who still stood in stunned silence. He forced a smile. Well, we can call it half a success. He ran? Baron asked, wand still in hand, frowning. At the last moment, he literally tore his soul in two, Avada said. He left about half in this crystal ball and ripped the rest free to escape, sacrificed a limb to survive. As expected of a once mighty Dark Lord, Baron admitted, regret and grudging respect in his voice. Then his expression eased. But at least we've severely weakened him. Losing half his soul, that's got to be a serious blow, right? Avada hesitated. Voldemort's soul had already been fragmented for so long that it was hard to tell how much this would affect his combat power. It should be, but I'm not certain. All in all, it wasn't in vain. Baron flopped down against the wall without caring for his posture. He had been so tense while using occlumency and posing for Voldemort, he didn't realize how much of himself he'd been holding in. Harry, still on the floor, looked puzzled. What did Voldemort mean just now about you, Ken, being a born dark wizard, wanting to rule everything and be the Dark Lord? Avada coughed awkwardly. Ah, ignore that. That was part of my cover while I was undercover with Voldemort. I must have played the part too well. He still thinks I'm like him. I'm a Hufflepuff, for heaven's sake. You were undercover with Voldemort? Harry blurted. All this year? You could say that. With nothing else to do, Avada gave Harry a rough account of what had happened. Harry listened in astonished admiration. You're the bravest wizard I've ever met, he said. It's nothing heroic, just what I could do, and it wasn't entirely successful. Avada flipped the crystal ball from hand to hand. We should head back. Harry, your friends are waiting. Go tell them you're safe. I need to take this to Dumbledore and have him check it over. Harry and Baron finally peered closely at the black crystal ball and felt the weight of what it contained. Baron touched it gently, whispering praise. As Harry focused, a sharp pain stabbed his forehead. He winced, fingers flying to his scar. It's hurting. My scar. It must still be connected to him. He rubbed the sour spot, probably because Voldemort's still alive. Avada's mood darkened. He did get away. As he said, one day he'll try to come back. Did you forget something, Ken? An old, gentle chuckle cut through the gloom. A dazzling flash of light bloomed in the center of the room, and Albus Dumbledore stepped out of it, smiling. In his hand was another small wisp of gray mist, familiar and unmistakable. Avada felt like his heart would burst. He rushed to Dumbledore without a greeting and stared at the hazy scrap cradled in the headmaster's palm. You caught him? Fortunately, I intercepted him as I was returning, Dumbledore said, delighted. Your actions and the adventurer's notes made that possible. If you hadn't forced him to lose so much of his soul and that adventurer hadn't provided detailed data, allowing me to prepare several spells specifically against him, I might not have been able to seize him. You succeeded? Baron and Harry crowded around, trembling. Dumbledore nodded. What I hold in my hand, combined with what is in this crystal ball, constitutes Lord Voldemort's entire wandering soul. Not a single scrap escaped. So, he's finished? Harry asked. That's right. Dumbledore's beard trembled as he let a rare warmth into his voice, but his composure stayed firm. We can declare with certainty, Lord Voldemort will never trouble us again. Chapter 90, A Happy Ending, or Not. Ken's head was still in a daze as he walked into the headmaster's office. The wild relief of escaping a desperate situation, of finding a way out, had stunned him. He swayed as if intoxicated, as if walking on clouds. Ron's exclamation and Hermione's piercing scream drifted past him like a breeze. That was Lord Voldemort, the big villain of 7 books. Could it really end like this? Was it truly over? Was the wizarding world finally going to have peace? From the thrill of planning, to the tension when facing Voldemort, to the shock of seeing him flee with a broken tail, and then the elation when Dumbledore descended from the sky, Ken had never felt such a whirlwind of emotions in 2 lifetimes. Everything's safe. His friends from the orphanage won't be persecuted. Dumbledore won't have to wear that cursed ring. Fred, Lupin, and Tonks won't die on the battlefield. Snape won't be bitten to death by Nagini. Cedric and Sirius won't fall to the killing curse, and the Defense Against the Dark Arts post won't have to change hands every year. Oh, right. If Voldemort is gone, and the curse on the Defense Against the Dark Arts professorship is broken, will Lockhart still be the professor next year? If he is, won't he be able to keep it for years? Oh no, Ken chastised himself. The Dark Lord isn't dead yet. Ken, a shake to his shoulders snapped him out of his reverie. He found himself standing in Dumbledore's office with Baron, Harry, Ron, and Hermione. Dumbledore had bottled the gray smoke into a small vial etched with intricate silver runes, and he still held that black crystal ball in his other hand. Oh, Professor, Ken realized he'd been grinning foolishly and hurriedly apologized. I suppose I should take some time to process everything. Dumbledore stroked his beard and chuckled. To be honest, I'm a little incoherent myself right now, but Ken, could you hand me that crystal ball? Although Voldemort has been completely sealed, that does not mean he is dead, Dumbledore continued, the solemnity returning to his eyes. As long as he lives, there is a chance he could return, as he has on other occasions over the past 11 years. I must research how he maintained his immortality and see that he is eliminated completely. Right. If those hidden Death Eaters learn this, they'll try anything to rescue him. There may even be people in the school who'd entertain the idea, like Malfoy. He looked at the students with a warning twitch to his mouth. Ron blinked. But Professor, where will you hide his soul this time? The 4th floor corridor again, with more protections, like the Philosopher's Stone? Ken and Baron burst out laughing. Hermione gave Ron a sympathetic tap on the head, Dumbledore smiled, and even Harry looked like he wanted to say something, but stopped himself. You can't blame him. After all, he wasn't involved in the final process, Ken said, setting the crystal ball on the desk and turning to explain with a smile. So, guess what the safest place in the whole school is? The fourth floor corridor, with all those protections and enchantments? Ron offered. In Dumbledore's pocket, Ken said. Hermione smacked Ron's head, exasperation on her face. If Dumbledore wants to guard something properly, he keeps it with him. No one takes anything from his hand. Ron stood there for a moment, then comprehension hit him. So the Philosopher's Stone was a trap? It was meant to attract Voldemort and then capture him? Thank you for the compliment, Miss Granger, Dumbledore said with a small bow. To be honest, the situation deviated somewhat from my original plan, and given how events unfolded, my initial intentions would probably have failed. Reaching today required some unexpected help. Unexpected help? Harry and Hermione both leaned in. That person preferred not to appear, and I shouldn't press him, Dumbledore said. But apart from the stone, almost all the magic and traps used against Voldemort were provided by that gentleman. He looked at them with a wry smile. I must also thank Mr. Ken and Mr. Shafake for their courage, determination, and wisdom. Without you, the plan on paper could never have been truly implemented. It's not an exaggeration to say you changed the wizarding world. But he almost got away. Ken's initial euphoria had cooled into a residual fear. If you hadn't caught him finally, who knows what he would have done. And we used some rather unorthodox methods, Baron added with a sigh. You did what was necessary. Dumbledore nodded, pleased to see they weren't becoming complacent. If I, as headmaster, could do nothing, I would be useless. How could I protect the school and my students then? He continued, voice softening. And by a twist of fate, that adventuring gentleman was also something of a seer. He foresaw that the hope of defeating Voldemort lay with Ken. Ken happened to have been close to Voldemort for a long time and had gained his trust. And Mr. Shafake's family happened to own a crystal ball that could serve as a vessel. Ken swallowed. By the way, Mr. Shafake, this crystal ball belongs to your family, doesn't it? I'm very sorry, but I'll have to keep it for a while. Rest assured that once Voldemort is completely eliminated, I'll return it to you. Baron gulped too, relieved that Dumbledore didn't press the matter further. Instead, the headmaster looked at the five of them and said, Let us conclude this matter for now. But please, don't make a spectacle of yourselves just yet. Exams are coming. Students in other years can afford distractions, but 5th years and 7th years cannot. He allowed himself a mischievous smile. However, I can tell you this in advance. Your commendation ceremony will be at the end-of-year feast. As for what honors you'll receive, I'll keep you in suspense. Oh my, it's almost 2 in the morning. You really should get some sleep, or you'll be useless tomorrow, Dumbledore added, glancing at his watch with an exaggerated air of surprise. Wait, Professor. Harry turned back before anyone could leave. May I ask you a few things in private? There's still so much I don't understand. Of course, Harry, Dumbledore replied with a chuckle and a nod. Then, tapping his forehead as if remembering something, he added, Oh, almost forgot. To show my gratitude, come to my office after the end-of-year feast. I'd like to give you something personally. 91. Remarks on the launch. It will officially launch tomorrow at noon. This is my first book signed and published as a new author. Achieving these results before the launch has already exceeded my expectations. I want to thank all the readers who followed, voted, and tipped, and I also want to thank my editor, Penglai, for their support along the way. To be honest, I never expected this book to get much attention. It began as a touchstone for me to learn how to build a novel from scratch and to prepare for the stories I really want to write. Even so, I treated the conception and writing with the utmost seriousness. After all, I owe it to the readers to be responsible. Unexpectedly, the book has drawn nearly 2,000 readers, and I'm truly flattered. Thank you again for your kind support. A few words about the work itself. The premise is admittedly a bit cliché. Student-centered Harry Potter fanfiction is everywhere. Lately, the fresh takes tend to be professor perspectives, off-campus stories, what-if scenarios, or crossovers that drop the setting into a different power system. After a lot of thought, I still chose to tell the story from a student's point of view because that's the clearest way to show what I want to explore. As you've seen, Lord Voldemort is defeated early in the Philosopher's Stone arc. He will still have a role later, but in a different form. From there, the plot, besides dealing with the Horcruxes, will gradually diverge from the original and slowly reveal the wider world beyond Hogwarts. I've laid a lot of groundwork for that. Professor Benjamin Baker's origins and those collections of research on dark wizards are all part of it. No one can promise what the future will bring for this book, but I can promise that I will finish it seriously and try to live up to readers' expectations. If you've enjoyed what you've read so far, please consider subscribing, even if it's just for the first chapter. I would be extremely grateful. 5 chapters will be released tomorrow. See you then. Hey, did you hear? The school opened up to outsiders today. Not exactly open, just a few reporters and some ministry folks. They said they'll be here for the end-of-year feast. Good heavens, did something happen? How come there's no news? If it's something the headmaster wants kept secret, it wouldn't get leaked ahead of time. Thank Merlin, we didn't hear anything big beforehand. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been able to focus on studying for the owls. But really, what could be worth such a fuss? It must be enormous. Even Professor Snape's been looking off lately. Ever since Dumbledore announced 2 days ago that he intended to invite reporters and ministry officials to the end-of-year feast, the students' speculation had been relentless. 2 days were long enough for thousands of imaginations to conjure every possibility, over and over, and still people kept inventing new versions. Into that buzz, Avada stumbled, dark circles under his eyes, and took his seat with the Hufflepuff table. From the day he'd caught Lord Voldemort until last night, he'd had to take a dose of the living hell potion every night just to sleep. Otherwise, every time he closed his eyes, he'd relive Voldemort's furious roar and Dumbledore's last-minute rescue in the 4th-floor corridor, and spend the night turning and tossing. Baron and Harry weren't sleeping much better either, but that hadn't stopped Baron, Avada, and Hermione from placing at the top of their year's final exams. Harry and Ron had done well enough too, good at least, for the satisfaction of having beaten Malfoy. It's finally going to be made public, he thought. How much will this change the wizarding world? What will the remaining Death Eaters in hiding do? Run for distant shores, surrender, or fight to the bitter end? What will Peter Pettigrew do? Keep pretending to be a rat? Or is he useless now? Should I expose him outright, maybe with the Marauders map? And the people rotting in the deepest cells of Azkaban must be raving with rage. Sirius will be ecstatic, but will he try to break out now? Never mind. Acquittal by the law is better anyway. Peter can't run. The tracking charm on Pettigrew had never broken. Someone had renewed it from time to time, and 3 months would be more than enough to carry them through a summer. Students from the 4 houses filled their long tables. The reporters and ministry officials brought folding chairs and set them up in the space between the tables. Photographers unpacked cameras and tripods. A pair of students near the staff table noticed and pointed. "Look, Snape's hands are shaking," they whispered among themselves. The other professors looked nervous too. A reporter within earshot raised his camera, snapped a few photos, then scribbled, "Renowned potion master Severus Snape observed with uncontrollable hand tremors, concerns raised about his ability to produce high-quality potions." When everyone was seated, Dumbledore stood and the great hall fell into an instant hush. "Congratulations to you all," he said in his familiar, cheerful voice. "You have completed another year, your minds fuller than before. A whole summer lies ahead for you to digest what you have learned and clear your heads. I am grateful to our guests for taking the time to be with us. These are not ordinary platitudes, for what I must say tonight is of great importance and concerns the entire wizarding community. But before I announce anything, first, the House Cup." He picked up a parchment, peered at it, and read out the results. 4th place Gryffindor, 382 points. 3rd place Hufflepuff, 453 points. 2nd, Ravenclaw, 456 points. And 1st place Slytherin, 482 points. Slytherin erupted into cheers, younger students squealing, older ones applauding in measured satisfaction. Dumbledore's face grew thoughtful. However, several recent events must be taken into account. I wish to add special points to 2 students who displayed extraordinary wisdom, courage, and steadiness in the face of danger. Mr. Ron Weasley and Miss Hermione Granger. For their contributions to the wizarding community, I award each of them 50 points. A murmur swept the hall. 2 first-year students winning credit for contributions to the entire wizarding world? Conversations crackled down the tables. With those points added, Dumbledore continued, I announce that Gryffindor and Slytherin are tied on 482 points. They will share this year's House Cup. He clapped his hands, and half the banners along the hall, which had been slate and green, shimmered and shifted to gold and scarlet, an outward sign of the shared victory. A cheer rose from the Gryffindor table, but curiosity quickly drowned celebration. Everyone wanted to know what Ron and Hermione had done. Dumbledore's smile turned more mysterious. In addition to the House Cup, I must present a special award. He paused, letting the moment hang. To Mr. Baron Shafiq, Mr. Harry Potter, and Mr. Ken. Their resolve, wisdom, and bravery combined to achieve a deed that has shaken the wizarding world and altered its course. For this, I present them with Hogwarts' highest honor. Their medals will be housed at the very top of the trophy room to commemorate their contributions. Frankly, had they not been minors, I would have petitioned for the First-Class Order of Merlin. The great hall exploded. Shouts, gasps, people craning to see the three at the Hufflepuff table. Friends shook them. Strangers crowded in. Flashes popped as reporters pointed cameras. Dumbledore raised his wand. His voice, amplified by magic, boomed through the hall. And now I shall announce the matter that has changed our whole society. Lord Voldemort has been captured. Silence fell like winter. For one suspended heartbeat, nothing moved. Then the hall erupted again. Shouts, the blare of cameras, a wave of cheering so sudden it felt like a physical thing. Flashbulbs turned the room into a staccato thunderstorm of light. Chapter 93, Principal's Speech. Dumbledore was quiet for a long moment, giving everyone in the Great Hall time to sort through their emotions. Even many of the teachers sitting on the staff benches were stunned. Only when the hall had finally quieted did his voice, not loud, but perfectly clear, fill the room again. Yes, just this year, Lord Voldemort, who once terrorized Britain and then vanished for 11 years, managed to infiltrate Hogwarts for reasons that will become clear. Mr. Ken discovered him in time. He, Mr. Potter, Mr. Shafeke, and a gentleman who wished to remain anonymous carried out a bold, meticulous, and ingenious plan to capture Lord Voldemort entirely. For 11 years, many of us feared he might not truly be gone, that he could return, and indeed he did, but from now on, that need no longer be a worry. He held up the bottle that contained what he called Voldemort's main soul, and with a flick of magic projected it, magnified, above the staff table. The Great Hall watched as the eerie gray mist swirled and a human face formed within it. This is what Lord Voldemort looks like now, Dumbledore said. He has clung to life in this bodiless form for 11 years. He no longer has the power to do us harm. However, he added, because he was exceptionally skilled in the dark arts, it will take time to ensure he receives full justice, but I assure you that time will not be long. At the last words, human voices erupted again. Reporters jabbed at shutters and raised hands. Without Dumbledore's authority, they might have rushed the staff table. He raised his voice with a touch of magic until the hall settled. Quiet, please. Let me finish. He paused, looking over the students and staff. Some were barely containing excitement, others confused, some on the verge of fainting with relief, and a few visibly uneasy. Lord Voldemort's true name is Tom Marvolo Riddle, he said slowly, his tone deepening. He was born in 1926. His mother was descended from Salazar Slytherin. His father was a Muggle. Sit quietly and listen. He grew up in a Muggle orphanage and took his place at Hogwarts in 1938, where he was sorted into Slytherin and became a prefect and head boy. He let the hall absorb that. What followed is history you all know. After graduating, he gathered followers and dark wizards. He preached pure-blood supremacy, arguing that wizarding status and power should be held above those of Muggleborns and Muggles, and that the latter should be subjugated. That doctrine drew many to him and gave rise to the Death Eaters. They unleashed a reign of terror across Britain, open violence, intimidation, suppression of free speech. It was the darkest decade many of you here remember well. But even though that terror is ending and Lord Voldemort is in our custody, there is a problem we have never truly faced. Why? he asked, scanning the hall. Was Voldemort's ideology able to attract so many wizards? Why did those people follow and serve a stranger for an abstract idea? The Death Eaters outnumbered the pureblood families. Many of Voldemort's followers were half-bloods, those whom the bloodline theory would label inferior. Why did they embrace pureblood supremacy? Dumbledore's voice softened. The hall listened. I have always believed wizards are among the happiest and most blessed beings. We can wave a wand and raise comfortable homes, turn barren fields into fertile land, warm the coldest place, travel where we please. A simple patch of dittany in a garden can be turned into a dignified livelihood. If one so wishes, one can enjoy life's pleasures while the international statute of secrecy is observed, even obtaining food and drink from muggles without trouble. Every effort we make can be transformed into tangible results. Each of us has the power to build a good life with our hands and wands. So why would any of us risk capture or death to harm others and destroy their freedom and happiness? His gaze sharpened and swept slowly across the tables, lingering over the Slytherins. I think the answer is greed and ignorance. Voldemort himself was consumed by greedy ambition. He wanted not only his own happiness, but to stand above everyone else. He wrapped that hunger in the banner of pureblood supremacy and used it to deceive and rally others. Among his followers were those as greedy and corrupt as he. Some purebloods who stood to gain from his rise, some who saw in his power a way to indulge their own misdeeds. And then there were those with nothing to gain who nonetheless embraced his ideas from the heart, hopelessly ignorant. The bloodline theory, which has echoed through wizarding society for nearly 1,000 years, has been ingrained so deeply that it turns people into machines, unable to think, deaf to logic, driven only to discriminate and hate. They refuse to accept other facts, dismiss the achievements of Muggle-born wizards, ignore the tragedies Voldemort caused, and fail to contemplate the darkness he might bring again. These people formed the backbone of the Death Eaters. They were the foundation that allowed Voldemort to seize half of Britain. They are not all monstrous in their private lives. Some are kindly neighbors, animal lovers, even helpful in ordinary ways. But in their minds, there is a switch labeled pure blood supremacy. Once that switch is flipped, they become hysterical, blind to bloodshed and suffering. Dumbledore drew a deep breath. His voice, though not loud, was unshakable. Lord Voldemort is not merely a man. He is an idea. As long as discrimination, prejudice, and hatred remain in our hearts like a cancer, another Voldemort will arise. He will again spread darkness and cause untold suffering. We must also understand the origins of the bloodline theory. In perilous times long ago, it was the great pureblood families who protected wizarding society, united us, and saved our ancestors, so its pride and prestige have historical roots. But times have changed. In this age, Muggle-born wizards enter magic the same as purebloods. Their magic awakens, they learn wand work at Hogwarts, they study, and then go out into the world to work, to live, to form families. They owe no one anything, nor have they taken from anyone. In fact, their inclusion has refreshed our society, bringing vitality, innovation, and new resources. Even after Voldemort's devastation, most do not return hatred for hatred. They value the peace we have fought for all the more. A ripple ran through the hall as many listeners suddenly understood what Dumbledore was saying. Eyes widened, faces fell. Dumbledore was openly declaring war on the bloodline theory. When he spoke of eliminating Lord Voldemort, he meant much more than the man in the bottle. 94. Dumbledore's gift. I wonder what kind of ripples this will make through the magical community. In the Hufflepuff common room, a senior student sighed as he sipped black tea. Did the headmaster's speech tonight almost offend half of Britain's pure-blood nobility? It's not that bad, another replied after a moment's thought. At least he acknowledged the historical prominence of the pure-blood families. That's basically an acknowledgement of their long-held wealth and rights. He didn't directly attack their core interests. Interests are one thing, beliefs another, the first said. They've always thought themselves superior, and now the headmaster almost explicitly condemned that. It'd be strange if they weren't furious. Don't forget, most of the Board of Governors are from pure-blood houses. Heaven knows how they'll react to that speech. But really, Professor Dumbledore, as the head of the only school in the country, seems perfectly placed to dismantle the whole bloodline theory, someone else mused. What worries me more is you-know-who, oh, now we can call him Lord Voldemort, is apparently a half-blood? Will the pure-blood Death Eaters who follow him pass out when they hear that? Evening had fallen. The year-end feast had ended, and reporters and ministry officials had already left. Thanks to Dumbledore's bombshell about Lord Voldemort, most people were talking about Tom Riddle and the headmaster's public declaration, and almost no one was bothering Avada with questions. He enjoyed a rare moment of peace. He sat on his dorm bed, idly flipping through a book, waiting anxiously for something. What could Professor Dumbledore want to give me that he arranged it so secretly? He even separated the five of us and sent us one by one. Boom. A sudden crimson flame sprang to life in the room, making him jump. In its fleeting glow, a golden-red feather appeared, hovering and slowly drifting down. Finally, Avada breathed, reached out, and caught the feather. In an instant, his body was wrapped in fire, and he vanished from the dorm as if evaporated. For a heartbeat, his vision was all flames. When the light cleared, he found himself in the familiar oddness of the headmaster's office and facing Dumbledore's kindly face. "I'm here, Professor," he said. Dumbledore nodded and beckoned him to sit, sliding 2 teacups closer with a wave. He smiled as if making small talk. "How did my speech go tonight? Was it effective?" "Effective, yes," Avada said, scratching his head awkwardly. "But the thing is, Professor, I'm only a muggle-born who's been in the wizarding world less than 2 years. I haven't really seen or experienced that stuff you mentioned. Pure-blood ideology, discrimination, persecution. I don't know much about it." "Then you are lucky," Dumbledore smiled. "Experiencing those things firsthand is not a blessing. I hope more people will eventually not even understand the gravity of my words. That would mean prejudice has been greatly reduced. But back to the matter at hand. Look at the gift I prepared for you." He opened a drawer and took out a slightly yellowed book. The cover was plain parchment, blank, unadorned, no title, nothing to suggest what lay within. "What is this?" Avada asked, puzzled, and opened it. The pages were densely filled with short lines packed so tightly that from a distance, the pages looked almost entirely black. As he read closely, his expression shifted to astonishment. He flipped through the book quickly and then looked up at Dumbledore. "This book is all table of contents?" "That's right." Dumbledore looked pleased at the reaction and smiled. "Oh my." Avada's voice dropped. The book contained tens of thousands of entries. Even if each entry were only a long essay, it would fill the headmaster's office many times over. And if his magic senses weren't deceiving him, "Let me show you how to use it," Dumbledore said, taking the book back. He opened to a random entry. "If you want to read an article, just tap the title with your hand." He tapped the title with a fingertip. With a soft pop, the plain volume changed. It became a much thinner but finely bound hardcover, the tapped title now written on the cover in gilt. "So it's a compressed library?" Avada breathed. "You could say that." Dumbledore demonstrated further. "If you want it to return to the master list, just slide your hand along the spine like this." The hardcover reverted to the dense table of contents, and I added a useful feature to avoid getting lost in so much material. There's a quick search charm on the cover. He traced a word on the blank parchment, dragon's blood, and when he opened the book again, the text had enlarged and spaced out, showing only entries that contained that phrase. Good heavens, a search engine, Avada thought, marveling. He couldn't help asking, "So, Professor, what all is recorded in here to fill so many entries?" "Oh, you finally asked. I was tempted to tell you without being asked," Dumbledore said, suddenly cheerful. "These are the near-lifelong research notes of my dear friend, Nicholas Flamel." "Flamel?" Avada blurted. "He specifically asked me to give this to you in thanks for your role sealing Lord Voldemort. I also added some of my own notes and organized them into this collection." "To be honest," Dumbledore continued quietly, "Nicholas and his wife and I originally planned for the Philosopher's Stone to be destroyed. That would have meant death for them. After 650 years of life, they would have welcomed it as the end of a long day and the beginning of another grand adventure. But after learning of the developments on my side, they changed their minds. They've decided to continue living, for as long as they wish, using their knowledge and influence to help bring positive change to the wizarding world. They sincerely want to see that future with their own eyes. You mean the complete end of Lord Voldemort? Avada asked. That's right, Dumbledore nodded. Did Baron, Harry, and the others receive a book like this? May I discuss its contents with them? No, they didn't, Avada said. Dumbledore shook his head. They were given other gifts, very fitting ones, but none as valuable as this. Then why give it to me? Avada asked. For 2 reasons. Dumbledore's smile turned private, his voice low. If my conjectures are correct, an unimaginable future might unfold. Even if they're wrong, more knowledge is never harmful. He let his eyes twinkle. One of those conjectures you already understand in your heart. The other is more ethereal, closer to a gamble than a hypothesis. So I won't say anything about that one for now, Ken. Are you pleased with the gift? Avada sat for a moment, the weight of the book and its implications settling over him. He looked at Dumbledore and finally nodded. Avada left the headmaster's office clutching the book, head bowed. All right, he'd been suspected, as expected. Still, it was within tolerable bounds. This year had been unusually productive. Fruitful, barely covered it. He'd sealed Lord Voldemort, obtained Nicholas Flamel's notes, earned Dumbledore's and Harry's trust, and learned to hide most of his magical senses, leaving only the ability to perceive prophecy and mental powers visible. He still didn't know how Dumbledore planned to carry out the Eliminate Voldemort operation, but Lucius Malfoy would certainly be even more afraid to keep the Horcrux diary now. Next year, Ginny would bring the diary into the school. Just like in the original story, he could take it from her then. He considered the Chamber of Secrets. With his current strength, it would take a long time to prepare to kill the basilisk, but he could at least study the petrifying magic and try to develop a counter-curse. He'd been so occupied with Voldemort that after casting the Gchi-Tianya curse, he hadn't checked the chamber at all this year. Maybe the system would pop up and award him some function. After casting a bubblehead charm on himself, he slipped into the spatial interlayer. The power of that magic was becoming clearer. No matter how secret the place, Chamber of Secrets, a Gringotts vault, even Azkaban, they seemed undefended to him. He wasn't sure whether a place protected by the Fidelius charm would be accessible, but he didn't have time for hypotheticals. He flew his broom to the abandoned girls' lavatory on the 3rd floor and bypassed Moaning Myrtle's ghost, peering around. For a long moment there was only silence. Where was the Chamber of Secrets? His soul voice searched, but the lavatory was, by all appearances, a normal room. There were no twisting passages, no faint traces of disused magic, and not even the slightest indication of a voice-activated enchantment. He jumped out of the spatial interlayer and cast a disillusionment charm on himself, wanting to look around before Myrtle noticed. It took only a little while to find, beside one sink, a small snake icon. It should have been the sign that hid the voice-activated charm to open the chamber. Yet to him it looked like a perfectly ordinary symbol, with no detectable magic. Had the chamber even existed in this version of events? If it didn't, would the basilisk and the diary still appear? If it did, why couldn't he perceive it? His eye twitched. Frustrated, he dispelled the disillusionment charm, left quietly, and returned to the Hufflepuff common room feeling dazed and unnerved. It was getting late. He'd leave school the next day and take things step by step next semester. When he got back, he promised himself he would grab every Horcrux he could. He went over the list in his head. Counting the crystal ball he'd just made, Voldemort had 7 Horcruxes: the Resurrection Stone, the Locket, the Golden Cup, the Diadem, the Diary, the Crystal Ball, and Potter. The Diadem and the Crystal Ball were already under his control. The Locket was still in the Black family home. Breaking into it might be difficult. The Diary would probably arrive of its own accord next year, and if not, Dumbledore could pressure Lucius to produce it. That left the Resurrection Stone and the Cup both high priorities for the coming summer. The Resurrection Stone carried a powerful curse, he knew. He'd look for a way to neutralize it, and if he couldn't, he'd isolate it and seal it away. If he could secure 2 Horcruxes for study, maybe 3, his research into removing soul fragments without destroying the host objects could advance significantly. But the Chamber of Secrets still nagged at him. The next day on the Hogwarts Express, Baron and Cedric were startled to see the dark circles under his eyes. "You're still wound up?" Baron asked. Even he, who had confronted Lord Voldemort directly, had slept well the night before. "How could it wear off so easily? You sealed Lord Voldemort," Cedric said, waving his arms dramatically. "If I'd done that, I'd be too excited to sleep for a month. My father would take me to the Ministry to show me off, and he'd boast to everyone, 'My son sealed Lord Voldemort.' That kind of thing only happens to Baron. Harry and I don't get a chance." Avada cut in dryly, and the joke cooled the compartment. Cedric cleared his throat and steered the conversation to safer ground. "By the way, you two are entering third year. Have you decided on your classes?" "I've thought about it," Avada said. Baron snapped back to the present and nodded. "I'm going to take care of magical creatures, ancient runes, and Muggle studies." "Muggle studies?" Avada raised his head. "Why Muggle studies?" "To understand Muggles, of course," Baron replied, puzzled by Avada's surprise. "Muggles are the majority of the world. They affect the development of magical society, so it's important to study them." "Have you read the textbook?" Avada asked. "I have," Baron said. "It's interesting. Otherwise, I wouldn't pick it." Avada sighed. "I'd suggest you read less of that book. I read it too, and the descriptions of Muggle society are, well, they're laughable." "How so?" Cedric asked. "Take the bit about rubber ducks," Avada said. "The book treats rubber ducks like a necessary item for Muggle baths. They aren't. They're a novelty toy. Many Muggles don't even take baths. They take showers." Cedric and Baron both stared, expressions slowly faltering. Avada shook his head. "If you want to understand something, experience it, or ask someone who actually lives it. Don't build your knowledge on guesses and secondhand assumptions. That's how most wizards understand Muggles, by assuming. So unless you plan to work in the Muggle Liaison Office, you might as well skip the course," he continued. "If you have questions, ask me. I can answer most things." As he said it, he had a brief, absurd realization. By training and circumstance, he'd become what amounted to the world's de facto Muggle studies expert. Who else could predict the development of the Muggle world for the next 30 years as accurately as he could? Another update would come later. Great Hangleton lay only a few miles from Little Hangleton, but the two could not have been more different. If Little Hangleton still showed any sign of life, Great Hangleton, further out, neglected, was nothing but decay. Decades ago, a family named Gaunt had lived there and had been among the wealthiest in the area. Now all that remained was a crumbling ruin, half swallowed by a wild, overgrown wood. Trees blocked out the light, walls were smothered in moss, most of the roof tiles had fallen away, and branches pushed through in places. Thick, rank weeds grew up past the windows, and the sills were coated in grime so old it might have been fossilized. In short, even a caveman would have found it inhospitable. And yet, in that forest frozen in neglect, a figure materialized. He carried a flying broomstick, tucked it away under his cloak, and his head was enveloped in a transparent, bubble-like film. "So how did the Gaunts ever live like this?" he muttered. "Even without the trees, this place wouldn't be fit for anyone." "Good thing I left the bubblehead charm up," he added, eyeing the rotting boards, the dust that would billow 3 feet into the air at the slightest wind, and the swarms of insects. Avada couldn't help but marvel at how ruined the descendants of Slytherin had become, and at the same time be quietly glad for his own prudence. Then he set to work, letting his magical senses probe the house's defenses. Of course, Voldemort wouldn't leave it undefended. He wouldn't have just cursed the ring and nothing else. The wards were dense. The outermost layer was a modified Muggle repelling charm capable of driving off weaker witches and wizards. The front door bore a lethal poison curse. The interior had been expanded into a maze by undetectable extension charms and studded with traps and mechanisms designed to kill without leaving a trace. Any one of these could keep a body from being recovered, Avada said under his breath. He felt, though, that the apparition ban here was aimed only at humans. Creatures like phoenixes or house elves weren't accounted for, which meant he could move through without triggering that particular safeguard. The thought struck him as odd, but there was no time to dwell, so he cast a Chi-Chanya curse and slipped into the interstitial space. From there he spotted a tiny gap, a magic void, buried inside the tangle of defenses. That was the place. Carefully, he maneuvered the broomstick over the area, and after confirming there were no mechanisms in the tiny chamber where the resurrection stone sat, returned to normal space. He stared at the unremarkable ring and frowned. The magical pattern around the resurrection stone, like the cloak of invisibility's defenses, was as abstract and tangled as a thestral, yet there was a strange order to the chaos, regularities that hid their purpose well. "Two of the Deathly Hallows are like this," he murmured, rubbing his chin. "I haven't studied the old wand in detail, but even its core is thestral hair. What exactly are thestrals, anyway?" He made a mental note to research thestrals later, then banished the thought. Now was not the time. He pulled a small vial of wit-sharpening potion from his cloak and swallowed a gulp, then set to deciphering the ring's wards with more diligence. The outermost layer, he determined, was the deadly curse, instant death to anyone who touched it. If Avada had read it correctly, the curse would annihilate life force and spirit at once, not even leaving a ghost. The small mercy was that it appeared to be single-use. But there were conditions. The trigger required the toucher to possess a certain level of spiritual power. In other words, the curse targeted powerful individuals. Perhaps it had been placed with Dumbledore in mind. Avada felt a chill and for the first time understood something of Voldemort at the height of his powers and cunning. Lucky for us, he chose to dull his own intellect in favor of securing immortality. He said half to himself, beneath the curse lay Horcrux enchantments, layers of familiar, Baroque magic encasing a small void, a fragment of Voldemort's soul. Below that was the ring's true structure, the magic of the Resurrection Stone itself. "Good," he breathed. "It seems Voldemort simply attached Horcrux magic to the surface of objects rather than altering the item's inner natures. The diadem was the same, and the Resurrection Stone too. If that's the case, the locket and the Hufflepuff cup might also be intact. Those artifacts could be preserved." He levitated the ring with a tentative levitation charm. It rose slowly and floated obediently. No resistance to levitation. This gets easier. From his pocket, he produced a small box made of some unfamiliar material, the kind of container sold for storing dangerous or unidentified cursed objects. He had bought it in Diagon Alley for more than 30 galleons. The merchant had claimed it could even hold fiendfire. Whether that was true or not, the box's internal protections were the second most complete Avada had ever seen, only behind Professor Baker's black crystal ball. Even better, his spiritual power hadn't yet reached the level required to trigger the ring's lethal ward, so he could have slipped it on with impunity, but the idea made him uneasy. What if Dumbledore ever shook his hand? He guided the floating ring into the box, fastened the lid, and sealed it with several layers of tape. Resurrection Stone, secured. Avada cast Ji-Chi Tianya again and stepped out of the gaunt ruin. He breathed easier as he held the small, tightly sealed box. "That curse isn't eternal," he told himself. "It can be weakened over time, or if needed, I could find a Death Eater in Azkaban to bypass it." As for the Hufflepuff cup, he thought, he'd pick that up when he next went shopping in Diagon Alley. He'd been gone for 4 or 5 days, and it was about time to return and spend time with those others. "I don't remember the Lestrange vault number," he added, thinking ahead. "I only remember it's the one by the dragon. I'll have to check them one by one." Third-year students require Standard Book of Spells, Grade 3, by Miranda Goshawk, Break with a Banshee, by Gilderoy Lockhart, Gadding with Ghouls, by Gilderoy Lockhart, Holidays with Hags, by Gilderoy Lockhart, Travels with Trolls, by Gilderoy Lockhart, Voyages with Vampires, by Gilderoy Lockhart, Wanderings with Werewolves, by Gilderoy Lockhart, Year with the Yeti, by Gilderoy Lockhart. As expected, Lockhart again. Avada rubbed his temples as he scanned the newly arrived book list. This year's Defense Against the Dark Arts class is useless, though I didn't expect much from it anyway. He'd been through Professor Baker's brutal training, had developed a magical structure sense, and taken part in several serious fights. Even with only average athletic ability, his combat level was far above his classmates. Earning the dubious honor of capturing Lord Voldemort had even qualified him as a dark arts defense master. He reckoned the Black Magic Defense League would be sending an invitation as soon as he graduated. Still, Lockhart's books were nationwide bestsellers and, bizarrely, praised by Professor Baker. "There's at least some content in them," he muttered. "Besides, they were mostly plagiarized, so buying them isn't a waste. He'll be exposed eventually." He pursed his lips, looking at how the Lockhart series nearly matched half the book budget, then read on. In addition to 7 compulsory courses, third-year students should choose at least 3 of the following: Care of Magical Creatures, Ancient Runes, Muggle Studies, Divination, and Arithmancy. Please purchase the relevant textbooks after choosing your electives and declare them after term begins. All right, stick to the original plan. Avada considered the list for a moment, then checked off Divination, Care of Magical Creatures, and Ancient Runes, the minimum 3 electives. He'd meant to take as few extra classes as possible. He still needed time for his own research. Horcruxes, Professor Baker's notes, and the newly acquired Nicholas Flamel research files. Those extracurricular projects already took more effort than his classes. His elective choices were practical. Ancient Runes was a prerequisite for advanced alchemy. Care of Magical Creatures would let him systematically study creature anatomy, useful for his upcoming work on Thestrals. Divination was trickier. He knew he wasn't a natural seer, so on paper it seemed a waste. But his magic structure sense told him otherwise. In Divination, he'd be in Trelawney's class. Trelawney, outwardly flaky, but in truth a conduit to a very particular branch of magical structure. It was a chance to peek into Divination from the inside. He wasn't going to miss it. As for Muggle Studies, mostly fluff, and Arithmancy, better learned at a Muggle university for mathematical modeling, he saw little need. Satisfied, Avada folded the list, slid it into his pocket, and picked up his suitcase and wand. Time to go to Diagon Alley. He froze. No one had told him how to get to Diagon Alley. The first year, he'd been apparated there by Dumbledore. The second year, he'd used the fireplace at Shafiq Manor. Purchases had been handled through simple correspondence with shops. He didn't even know where the Leaky Cauldron's entrance was. He could apparate straight to Diagon Alley, true, but if he was spotted doing unauthorized apparition or tampering with the trace on his wand, it could be very serious, enough to land him in Azkaban for a while. He had to be discreet, so he took a taxi out to a relatively desolate spot on the edge of the city, set his suitcase down, and raised his wand. Bang! With a deafening crash, a bright purple triple-decker bus materialized in the open space before him, tires screeching. Golden letters gleamed across the windshield, Night Bus. A conductor in purple jumped down, grinning professionally. "Welcome to the Night Bus, emergency transport for stranded witches and wizards," he announced. "Just stick out your wand arm, step aboard, and we'll take you wherever you need to go. I'm Stan Shunpike, conductor at your service." Stan Shunpike looked very young, probably recently qualified. He had prominent ears and a few pimples. After his spiel, he gave Avada a curious once-over and raised an eyebrow. "Student? Yes. You don't look like you're in trouble." He studied him more closely, suspicious. "You didn't sneak out from a Muggle family, did you?" "No. I need to get to Diagon Alley to buy textbooks for the new term." "Diagon Alley?" Stan repeated, surprised. "The Leaky Cauldron is less than 5 miles from here." "I know that," Avada said, "but I don't know exactly where the Leaky Cauldron is." Stan was silent for a moment, puzzlement and suspicion in equal measure. He looked like he suspected Polyjuice Potion or some other disguise. "What? Then the professor who escorted you to school was negligent. That person must be new. No one's usually that careless. Could it have been the former Defense Against the Dark Arts professor?" "No, the school shouldn't let them escort Muggleborns." Avada let the remark slide. Powerful wizards could get so used to advanced conveniences, they forgot the basics. They assumed everyone else had the same shortcuts. He wondered, not for the first time, whether Dumbledore still remembered which bricks to tap to open Diagon Alley. Seeing Stan about to go on, Avada cleared his throat. "How much is the fare to the Leaky Cauldron?" 2 sickles. Stan dashed the answer off briskly. "For 3 sickles more, you get a chocolate frog, and for an extra sickle, a hot water bottle and a toothbrush, but you don't seem to need those. It'll only take a few seconds anyway. 3 bricks up from the trash bin, then 2 to the right, and tap it gently 3 times with your wand. The entrance to Diagon Alley will open. Remember that?" "Got it. Thanks a lot." Have a chocolate." Avada still handed over 3 sickles for the chocolate to thank Stan Shunpike for showing him how to get into Diagon Alley, though the journey would probably only take 5 seconds. To avoid drawing Muggle attention, the night bus let him off in a narrow alley a few dozen meters from the leaky cauldron, so no one would see someone appear out of thin air on the main street. From the outside, the pub looked cramped, but inside it opened wide and messy. Drinkers sat and stood wherever they could. Those with cups in hand shouted loudly, while the bottle swillers could barely manage more than incoherent mumbling as they lurched about. The whole room was thick with smoke and the smell of alcohol. It made a person feel hollow-mouthed unless they had something to drink. Behind the bar, an old man mixed drinks with practiced ease, laughing and chatting with patrons. Old Tom, the current owner. Whether any strange rumors about the leaky cauldron's owner had circulated since Professor Dumbledore exposed Lord Voldemort's true name, Avada didn't know. Hoisting his suitcase, he squeezed through the crowd and finally escaped the reek to the pub's backyard. "Heavens, I hope Hannah will get it a bit cleaner when she takes over," he murmured. He thought of his quiet Hufflepuff Jr., imagining, unconvincingly, Hannah one day shouting jokes in 18 different dialects like old Tom. He shook his head, not thinking further. He tapped the unlucky brick 3 times, just as Stan had shown him. The wall creaked apart to reveal a bustling, broad street. "It's been over 2 years since I started at Hogwarts, and this is the first time I've entered Diagon Alley through the leaky cauldron," he grumbled, and walked straight into Flourish and Blots to buy his textbooks, glancing around for anyone he might know. There were none. To stagger the crowds, Hogwarts had sent letters for different year groups on different days. 3rd year was especially busy because course selection would affect future paths, and parents would argue and delay decisions. Avada had come on the same day he received his letter, so Diagon Alley felt unusually empty. "Good, at least no one will pester me about Lord Voldemort," he muttered. The ceiling of Lord Voldemort had made less of a splash than he'd expected. He'd been out of sight for 11 years, and most people had already adjusted to life without him, assuming he was dead or incapacitated. Aside from a handful of Hogwarts students who had broken into a cold sweat when they realized they'd once coexisted with Voldemort and were especially grateful to Avada and the others, the whole affair had less impact on the magical community than Dumbledore's public stance on blood purity. No one had even noticed him at the leaky cauldron. 3rd years are using Lockhart this year? Mr. Flourish's eyes widened when he saw the book list in Avada's hand. Looks like the new Defense Against the Dark Arts professor must be a die-hard fan. But the Dark Forces, a guide to self-protection series, has been used for years. Isn't it a bit sudden to change the text for an entire year? What about the 5th years with exams? Who knows? Dumbledore must have his reasons for hiring him, Avada said casually, pursing his lips. The owner rolled his eyes. "You know who took advantage of a loophole last year, didn't he? He was so weak that even a few students could have beaten him, yet he still managed to fool Dumbledore. Maybe the headmaster is getting old." "Hey, wait, you look familiar. Oh, you're that. Shh." Avada lowered his voice and gestured. "Keep it down. I'm just here to buy books." The owner cleared his throat awkwardly, though he kept glancing at Avada as he wrapped the dozen textbooks for the coming year. The stack filled most of Avada's suitcase. Once he left Flourish and Blots with the now heavy case, he found a deserted corner, slipped the bulky suitcase into an undetectable extension charm pocket, then put a disillusionment charm and a bubble head charm on himself for safety. He used the Ji-Chi Tianya charm to enter a spatial interlayer, mounted his broom, and navigated in absolute darkness, reading the magical architecture of nearby objects. He had to be sure Gringotts had no goblin countermeasure that could yank him out of the interlayer. He piloted his broom down, deeper and deeper, until a huge block of dense vitality appeared before him, the dragon. Over 20 vaults clustered around it, but only one contained a magical void. If a goblin hadn't been sleeping in it, that void would hold Hufflepuff's golden cup. Close enough to see the familiar Horcrux aura, relief flooded him. "Other items in the vault are wrapped in scorching charms and duplication charms," he observed. "If I rushed in, I'd be burned to death by a pile of scalding treasures. Good thing I brought the broom," He was about to exit the interlayer when his mental sense slammed into an invisible barrier. He couldn't penetrate space to leave. Apparition inhibition? No, this is much more complex than at Hogwarts. He analyzed the barrier. The inhibition carried dozens of traits, human mental signatures, goblins, giants, house elves, phoenixes, ball-dodging birds. The list went on. The mental power of almost every creature capable of apparition in the world was blocked, and those protections were layered so expertly they didn't conflict. As expected of a bank founded by goblins with deep roots, their security is stronger than anywhere else, he said aloud, genuinely admiring their emphasis on client safety. Then he pulled the frequency modulation lens he'd made last semester from his pocket. But it still won't stop me. As a rule, he had mapped a house elf's mental signature onto the lens before, because the school house elves were visible every day and easy to imitate. Here, though, he could rewrite the pattern entirely. If he presented himself as a niffler, one that could apparate, that would be ideal. He adjusted the lens to emit a new, unblocked signature and slipped it on. The inhibition had no instruction to intercept the mental pattern of a niffler. With the disguise accepted, he appeared inside the Lestrange family vault and, aided by his flying broom, retrieved the golden cup bearing the Horcrux magic. With this, the main task for the summer is complete, he thought, settling the cup safely. If I control the diary next semester, I can finally begin researching how to strip the soul fragment from Harry's body. What should I do with the remaining time? Maybe look through Nicholas Flamel's notes in advance. For the next stretch of time, Avada stayed obediently at the orphanage. Apart from chatting with friends, looking after the younger children, and exchanging a few letters with his Hogwarts acquaintances, he threw himself into studying Nicholas Flamel's notes on alchemy. At first, he'd worried that a complete novice like himself would be out of his depth with the writings of a master like Flamel. But a closer look put him at ease. As Flamel's lifelong notes, the book included his earliest, stumbling attempts and basic lessons. What had once been cutting-edge 6 centuries ago read now as accessible foundations. Avada could not only learn them, he could follow the thought process of a young Flamel and pick up the flashes of genius that shaped his later work. That insight alone accelerated Avada's own progress. He also wasn't as ignorant of alchemy as he'd feared. He'd already mastered an important area: psychodynamics, the study of mental interaction with alchemical products. Because alchemical creations are meant for human use, integrating with a user's mind is unavoidable. Almost every alchemical field involves the expression and application of mental power. In that respect, Avada could be called exceptionally capable. Finally, he'd chosen his topic smartly. To take advantage of his magical senses, he studied the wand as an alchemical product. The old wand he carried served as ideal reference material, letting him make rapid progress. Wand making draws on herbs, potions, magical creatures, and mental power. It mostly avoided the rune knowledge he hadn't learned yet. As one of the world's finest alchemists, Flamel had researched wands thoroughly and had a friendly relationship with the Ollivander family. If he'd wanted, Flamel could probably have been the best wand maker in France, on par with the Ollivanders, but he'd never been particularly interested in making that into a profession. The book did note that Flamel had personally crafted a few powerful wands, superior to common ones, though none could match the legendary old wand of Professor Dumbledore. With Voldemort gone, life finally settled into a dull normality. The start of term promised to be pleasantly uneventful. Avada strode into the station intending to find an empty compartment, sit quietly, and enjoy the calm. Harry? Ron? When he threw open a compartment door, he stumbled back a step, eyes wide at the faces inside. Is something wrong? Harry asked, blinking as if confused by Avada's expression. Shouldn't we be on the train? Have we been secretly expelled? Or have we been killed by Lord Voldemort and are haunting the corridor? Ron waved his hand in front of Hermione's face. Hermione? Hermione? Can you see? Hermione rolled her eyes and ignored him, then leveled a puzzled look at Avada. Yeah, Ken, why are you staring? Cough. Nothing. Avada recovered quickly, smoothing his expression into an apologetic smile. I just didn't expect to find you sitting so far forward. Didn't you usually sit nearer the back? How was your holiday? Fantastic. Harry launched into a bright account. After buying books in Diagon Alley, I stayed at Ron's for a while. Em's cloth? Uncle Vernon and the others couldn't wait for me to leave. Their house is amazing. Congratulations on further integrating into the wizarding world, Avada said dryly. The conversation pulled their attention away from his odd look, and after a while, Avada politely declined an invitation to stay and left the compartment. The moment the door slid shut, the surprise and confusion he'd hidden flared across his face again. Dobby hadn't greeted Harry at the station, or stopped them outside. Why hadn't Lucius cleared out the dark artifacts? In the original story, Lucius panicked after Voldemort's fall and rushed to dispose of his family's dark objects, destroying the diary, that whole mess. Here Lucius seemed not to have acted at all. Did the diary not exist in this version of events? Had he transmigrated into the wrong world? After all, the Chamber of Secrets itself might be gone. Overthinking was useless. Once he got to Hogwarts, he'd warn Dumbledore first, then take Harry to the Chamber of Secrets entrance and check. But if the chamber no longer existed, how could he confirm whether the diary had ever been there? He tried to calm himself and found an empty compartment to sit in. It wasn't long before Cedric, Baron, and Cho joined him. "You look preoccupied," Cho said the moment she sat down. Apparently, Avada's expression had been obvious to everyone who saw it. "Probably nothing," he said, rubbing his temples. "It's just, I've had a bad feeling lately, like something's going to happen next semester." Baron's pupils narrowed. He knew Avada's precognitive abilities and didn't take casual talk about omens lightly. Cedric and Cho were less alarmed. "You probably spent a year with Lord Voldemort last year," Cedric said. "That kind of mental pressure, what's it called? Post-traumatic stress? My father told me about an old Auror at the Ministry named Moody. He fought dark wizards his whole life. After he retired, his mind never relaxed. He's always sure a dark wizard will jump out from somewhere. He tested his food for poison 3 times before he'd eat." "So did any dark wizards actually get him in retirement?" Cho asked, curious. "Nope," Cedric said with a shrug. "He hasn't even seen the hair of a dark wizard in 10 years. Cedric leaned forward, trying to reassure him. "You earned yourself a peaceful life, Avada. Even Voldemort is finished. Who's left who can threaten Hogwarts?" Avada sighed. "That's the problem. I don't think Voldemort was completely defeated. Even Baron relaxed now. He's with Professor Dumbledore. No one can rescue him. Didn't Dumbledore say Voldemort had been left behind with no chance of escape? I hope I'm overthinking." Avada shook his head and pushed the thought away for the moment. He'd do what he could to prevent whatever danger was coming. "Voldemort, lend me your power. Voldemort, lend me your power." Under the patient nudging of his friends, Avada's nerves finally loosened. He relaxed into conversation and, for once, actually enjoyed the Quidditch talk. Having watched a proper match last year, he'd developed a genuine interest, even if playing himself was out of the question. Thanks to Lord Voldemort's actions last year, the group's topics had widened beyond admiration for Avada and Baron. Now their chatter ranged from the implications of Voldemort's capture to Headmaster Dumbledore's declarations and the future direction of wizarding society. The train glided into the station as the sun set. As third years, Avada and Baron got to experience the small, smug thrill of leading younger students. They guided Harry and the others to the Thestral station. The Thestrals were as peculiar as ever, skeletal, strange, barely solid, and this time Avada could actually see one. He had been present for Quirrell's death last year, the same as Baron and Harry. The sight that had remained hidden now presented itself plainly. The Thestral Avada Cho's met his stare, snorted with what looked like surprise at being noticed, then pulled its motion into a slightly more restrained trot. The carriage they rode fell a section behind the rest. Avada thought, "You're so good at being invisible, you've developed social anxiety?" He wasn't done muttering under his breath either. As they entered the Great Hall, ready to enjoy the usual first-year antics, someone shrieked at the teacher's table. "Gilderoy Lockhart!" Silence swallowed the hall for a few beats. Then pandemonium broke out, screams and excited chatter drowning everything. A conspicuously handsome man Avada had never seen before smiled, rose, and made an exaggerated calming gesture. His lips moved, but no one could hear him. He awkwardly nudged Professor Sprout. Professor Sprout, bewildered, cast a sonorous charm, and Lockhart's voice finally rolled over the tables. Don't be excited, children. Don't be excited yet. You haven't seen wrong. I, Gilderoy Lockhart, will indeed be your new professor this year. The excitement swelled. But please, for now, hold your cheers. After all, we still have the sorting ceremony. I won't introduce myself further. That is the headmaster's job. With Lockhart's pleading, the uproar settled into a rolling murmur. Every eye was on him. Avada didn't hesitate to stare back and analyze. His mental power was mediocre, only slightly stronger than the average adult wizard, Avada noted. Not even up to the level of a beater, probably. He detected no particular mental structure suited to memory charms. Lockhart's books and stories were likely the product of personal study and talent, not a magically augmented archive. With that level of mental strength, he could deeply learn one or two things at most. The more Avada's mind parsed, the nastier the conclusion. Lockhart's prose was brilliant. He had a knack for narrative, vivid, well-paced, full of humor and well-timed emotion, so convincing that his work read like the diary of a daring, learned, and kind-hearted adventurer. The books brimmed with useful knowledge presented in an engaging, memorable way. In the hands of an excellent teacher, they could have been textbooks, but Avada knew what lay behind those brilliant tales. They were stolen, victims rendered amnesiac by memory charms, left wandering without the stories that were their lives. The more dazzling the story, the more Avada loathed Lockhart. You don't have a broken wand to wipe your memories and escape this time, he thought darkly. He muttered what, if heard aloud, would have made even Lord Voldemort wince. Lord Voldemort, help me one last time with the curse you left behind. The great hall doors opened. Professor McGonagall led the first years in, single file, and by a flick of magic muffled the riot of voices. The sorting ceremony will now begin. After the sorting hat finished singing, McGonagall read from her parchment. Albert Adams, Hufflepuff, Colin Creevey, Gryffindor, Luna Lovegood, Ravenclaw. Avada gave a deliberate extra look at the pale, dreamy blonde girl. On the platform, Ginny Weasley was next. Ginny Weasley, Gryffindor. When the last of the first years were sorted, Headmaster Dumbledore rose. Smiling, he addressed the school. I'm sure you've all noticed a new face among our staff this year. Allow me to reintroduce him. At the cue, Lockhart stood, beaming. Dumbledore continued. I am honored to invite Mr. Gilderoy Lockhart to serve as our defense against the dark arts professor. He is a renowned adventurer, a famous best-selling author, and an honorary member of the Black Magic Defense League. Many of you have read his works and will know more about his exploits than I do. I believe Professor Lockhart will bring that knowledge to life for you in the most vivid and entertaining way. All right, everyone, let's eat. As if on cue, platters and roasted meats, puddings and pies cascaded onto the tables. The students, starved of conversation, fell into clusters of gossip. Lockhart actually agreed to teach. Merlin, I can see him every day. But isn't he worried about the curse on the castle? If he suffered a permanent injury, his adventuring career would be over. Maybe that's exactly why he came, to confront the dangers inside and come back with another story. Just thinking about it is thrilling. Isn't Professor Snape looking particularly grim this year? Didn't you hear? Over the summer, the sales of potions he claimed to brew fell through the floor. Apparently, Rita Skeeter wrote something. Avada ate in silence while his mind worked. Dumbledore really didn't seem to know Lockhart was a fraud. If he did know, why would he hire him? Dumbledore didn't have Voldemort's shadow at the back of his head. I need to see him tonight, Avada decided. Tell him about the basilisk and the diary. Then tomorrow, I'll take Harry to the abandoned lavatory and confirm what I already suspect, and then I can breathe a little easier.